to end. With your backs up against the wall, it looks like the end of the road. Stand your ground to the bitter end.
On April the 2nd, the Americans had quickly broken through the Iraqi defenses on the Euphrates. Now they were advancing on their next major objective, Baghdad Airport. Symbolically and strategically, this was the most important battle yet.
Our job was to go get the airport and threaten Baghdad from the west and to take that regime icon away.
They expected fierce resistance. But as night fell, they weren't sure where it would come from or when.
We kept scanning on our thermal imaging and saw really nothing.
It appeared to be deserted.
The airport was completely black. A very, very eerie night. We just expected this huge battle with the Special Republican Guard, and it didn't happen. And we were extremely puzzled. And we were extremely tired.
Parked right next to the airport runway, Marcone's men got their first sleep in 48 hours.
The sun started to come up about 4:30. I was asleep on the top of my tank. And then I heard a tank shoot. And then I said, okay. So I get up and I look, and it was something that you would just not believe. Iraqis getting out of their beds, getting up to the sunshine, and scratching their heads and looking around and saying, oh my God. And us doing the same thing, saying, what in the hell is going on?
Baghdad had been under aerial bombardment for days. Confused by the constant noise, the Iraqi troops at the airport had slept through the initial American entry at the other end of the runway.
They were so close that tank commanders were using pistols and hand grenades from the hatches into the Iraqi bunkers.
People were running back and forth. They were shooting at us.
Don't even know what they're fucking shooting at.
It was vicious there for that hour and a half because they really tried to get themselves together. I had tanks hit with RPGs. We had grenades, you know, blowing up all around us.
They were shooting at us, and we just engaged with everything we could.
Desperate, the Iraqis threw troops into the counterattack. Now the Americans came face to face with the teenage fanatics of the Baghdad Fedayeen.
We had to resist them, to fight them, to send them back to their own country. We are Iraqis. They're not even Christians. They're Jews.
These guys were doing like these suicide tactics, we called it. They're running out of these secure bunkers with basically AK-47s, running right at us.
The fighting was fierce. They had planes and tanks. And all we had were machine guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and hand grenades.
Then about 50 of the guys gave up. They were tired of watching their buddies die, I guess.
We had to withdraw. We just couldn't stand up to them. There were only about 25 of us left. Most of the Fedayeen were killed.
We crushed the forces in Saddam International Airport, and we cleaned the whole place of the airport by our...
In Baghdad itself, there was an air of unreality. The authorities remained defiant, and elsewhere, life continued as normal. The presence of militiamen on the streets, the only outward sign of crisis. On April the 4th, as fighting raged at the airport on the edge of the city, Iraqi TV even showed pictures of Saddam on walkabout in the west of Baghdad. But the Americans were not yet ready for the final assault. Still, they feared Saddam's Republican Guard. The key Republican Guard units had been positioned due south of Baghdad. The American advance had simply bypassed the bulk of them. Before the battle for Baghdad could begin, a brigade was dispatched south to deal with them. Air commanders said 80% of the Medina division had been destroyed, but the men on the ground needed to be sure. They found themselves in an area of dense palm groves.
We come in contact literally with hundreds of armored vehicles, artillery, air defense, etc. like that.
They found the most powerful armored division in the Iraqi army, almost entirely intact.
80% of their vehicles were still there, at least. They were dispersed and hidden so as not to be seen from the air.
It was another major intelligence failure.
I had moved all my troops to new positions. We created almost 7,000 new locations for our weapons, and we distributed enough ammunition to last for 6 months.
The Americans faced a battle they thought they'd never have to fight. But they'd caught the Iraqis by surprise. The American advance had been so fast, most of their tanks were facing the wrong way.
They would just hit so hard and so quickly, they just couldn't react to it. We just came upon them in close air support and artillery. It was just, I'm sure, more than they could even imagine, and it just developed so quickly, and our tanks and Bradleys are just going through their formation so quickly. It just becomes obvious that it's hopeless for them.
The Medina division simply melted away.
We'd see, a lot of middle-aged males walking away from battlefield areas